I'd say 80 to 85% of when you do call them out, it almost goes the right way. And I've always been one to like celebrate the wins, focus on what you are doing, not on what you're not doing. Welcome back to another episode of Confessions of a PT. In this week's episode is, do we need to bring back fat shaming? And I couldn't have a better partner for this one. So, Mr. Matt Cowell, should we start with your Gazette write-up back in the day?
We've had that said.
Is that a no comment? He's taking the Fifth Amendment here.
Yeah, let's move on.
Moving on, yeah. Google it if anyone is interested. Bit of claim to fame there. So, fat shaming. What are your thoughts around it? Do we need to bring it back, or is it a sensitive subject?
I said I wasn't going to sit on the fence here, but I probably am going to a little bit, because, you know, things are very rarely black and white. The right answer is usually in the grey area, somewhere in between. I think we are in a bit of an age where we prioritise people's feelings and emotions first. And in some ways, because life is challenging and there are lots of mental health challenges with life, that's not a bad thing to do. But at the same time, it hasn't really got us anywhere in terms of where people are at with their physical health. Look at the rates of obesity, disease markers, average health and lifespan. So we kind of need to start to think about it differently, I think, to move the needle in the right direction. Shame is probably the wrong word, because it's kind of
it's quite negative, isn't it?
Yeah. So inherently, like, there is no such thing as like a good shame. It's not possible. So I'm kind of in the middle. What do you think?
So yeah, like we said, the word shame, I think, could be changed because it's automatically negative. I think when you look at calling someone out on their BS, it could be constructive criticism. It could have almost like a positive spin on it. It depends, I think, the type of individual. Like you said, the grey area, what's their support network like? How bad are they? But I do think people are just sort of comfortable or just settle. And that gap is like, where does it end? And do you think people are genuinely aware of how bad they are? Or is it just...
No, I don't. I think that's part of the problem. I think we're the frog in the boiling water. For anyone that doesn't know that analogy, you'd never do it. But the idea being that you put a frog in boiling water, it jumps straight out. You put it in cold water and slowly turn the temperature up over time. You can kill it because it doesn't notice the contrast. That in many ways is kind of almost like the way we're eroding and decaying like public health. There isn't this kind of big moment of awareness that we can kind of pivot from. It's just so insidious and subtle. I think one thing I think we do need to kind of do is somehow get our head round to what extent we can get people to take personal responsibility without that being an offensive ask, because we really should be doing that for the sake of kind of like the collective society and the problems that occur when we don't. And, you know, as I said earlier, I don't like the word shame necessarily, but I don't think it's bad to have a bit of an enemy that you're trying to get away from. I think the idea of being obese should be like an enemy that we're trying to avoid. You know, one of my favourite sayings is, what you don't hate, you will eventually tolerate. So unless there's something that you're trying to get away from that you've made out to be a bit of an enemy in your mind, it's all just meh. It's all kind of all right. Does it really matter? And that's when you really slide backwards. Whereas if you have a bit of a boundary and it's like, won't tolerate this, it's unacceptable for me to be this weight, this body shape, this body size, in this era with this level of abundance, this level of resources. That's what you should be saying, really.
Yeah. I think with motivation as well, I think there's two different types, whether it's fear motivation of getting to a stage or almost rewards. And it's like, which one it is better for you? But yeah, it's just like, where is that line where eventually you're at rock bottom, or like we said before, if you go past that, is there no way back? And if you're not made aware of that, I know some people's views with like GPs, like they know a lot about a lot of things. Yeah. And it's just like, it's always just quick referral with like pill or whatever it is, where like not genuinely addressing the cause. And yeah, so how would you then, if you had a client that you knew was being dishonest and progress going in the wrong direction, what would be your sort of first point of call?
I mean, subject to the relationship I have with them, I do often like to go for quite tough love, you know, and you've got to almost kind of temperature check whether this is possible with them, because you can end up, you know, easily offending people very quickly. You know, but it's not uncommon for me to say things to my clients like, there was a 400 million to 1 chance of you being alive, and you're just prattling around at this percentage body fat, sort your life out. And I truly believe that's why people do coach with me, because you know, you can't be passionate about results and at the same time just really accepting of obesity. And it's fine when people are overweight. That's impossible. Yeah. So you can't be hardcore on the results, wanting to make it happen. Yeah. Slight side topic. It's why I don't necessarily agree with fat personal trainers. Yeah. And I know that's because, you know, there's one of two things going on there. You either don't know how to do it, or you can't leverage yourself to do it. And I don't know which one's worse. Yeah.
I think when relatability from a client to trainer is huge. I think if you're not walking the walk, or you haven't been there, done it, you don't know the struggles and that, how can you then turn around and say that to someone?
Exactly. You've got the client buy-in is number one.
100%.
And they don't have to buy into you because you look like a Greek god necessarily, but they've got to buy into you're the person that can help, especially in the modern day where everyone's got an opinion, their attention's being pulled all over the place, and you've got to kind of cut through the noise and get them to listen to you and buy in to something so that they can move forward. You're not going to do that if you look like...
Yeah.
You know,
I'd probably say out of all the tough conversations I've had with clients, I'd probably say maybe 3 have gone horrific with like them leaving. But I'd say 80 to 85% of when you do call them out, it almost goes the right way. And I've always been one to like celebrate the wins, focus on what you are doing, not on what you're not doing, until a point. And one client in particular, he was saying he was training like 6 days a week, 2-hour sessions, 12k steps a day, eating 300 calories under what he was saying, no changes. Then it was like, he was putting on weight, and I'm like, okay, must be a thyroid issue. So paid for his blood work to get done, all come back fine. And then it was like, I've almost got data on you that it's scientifically proven that something's not, it's energy balance, right? And you're being dishonest. And I think that's when it gets to a stage with like tough love, like you're clearly either not understanding what you're doing or you're lying. And obviously, you know, like you said, with that temp check, you understand with it. And that was like tough love that was needed. And lo and behold, changed his ways. So,
yeah, I mean, I think, you know, when someone really gives you some tough, developmental, harsh feedback, you can do one of two things. You can either get bitter or better. And you really want people to do the latter, obviously, because no one really wins from the first. But, you know, when I've either been given really kind of like gut-wrenching feedback, I've always been kind of like, you know, what does this say about what can I fix here? What do I need to peel? You know, it's easy to go, that's so out of order, you can't say that, like, and then just deflect and kind of protect yourself from that. Yeah. What the better habit is to go, oh yeah, there's some truth in that. I didn't want to hear that. Why didn't I want to hear that? Because I know it's true. Because I need to face some stuff that I don't need to really, you know, the capacity in which you can grow is always the amount of which you can accept about yourself without running away. So, that makes you kind of look, and it's not easy to do. And you can see why people would rather just wave a flare and say, I'm offended, you can't say that. Mm-hmm. But really, you never see people who have been through a transformation and were really, really overweight and now look great, quote unquote, that are easily offended.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Then it's always the people that are stuck and stay stuck that are offended.
Yeah.
People that have transformed usually be like, oh God, my mate used to slap my stomach, and say, Christ, call me all the nicknames under the sun. And now I'm almost borderline grateful to him because I used it as kind of fuel. Careful with that message, because you can kind of almost see, let's not go out and just be, maliciously nasty to each other. But when someone has changed, they're never annoyed about it in retrospect.
Yes. And it's sort of taking responsibility in it. I think self-awareness and self-reflection is key, and a little bit off topic, but when I've lost clients in the past, the first person I look at is myself. And then when you get like feedback or surveys, you're not even aware sometimes of what you've done or what you've been doing or where you can improve. And I think from another source to sort of almost give you that feedback is so powerful, because it is general awareness. You might not even be aware of like little things you are doing wrong over time or could be improved, for example. So I think that's very powerful to prioritize that, either yourself or asking for a bit of love from someone.
And I think, no one can do it for you. No one will do it for you. So if someone is being quite harsh with you, I would almost try and reframe that and look at that as they're expending energy on wanting to help you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It would be less, it would be easier for them to just passively tell you what you wanted to hear. They're exerting more energy in trying to be thought-provoking, trying to be a bit cutting, to prompt you into action. So it's actually it's almost like more endearing. They're showing you more love by doing that. Do you know what I mean? Everything is energy. They're showing you more, they're giving you more energy, which shows that they want it to work for you, rather than just like this indifference of just kind of like patting you on the back regardless. So in some ways, you've got to kind of look at that and respect that they're with you on the journey. Like as a coach, it shows that they want it for you and they're trying to find ways to push your buttons to get you to do it.
Yeah.
Which is coming from a good place, There's nothing wrong with, there is, subject to the way that's done, there's lines, but...
Yeah. Because they've stopped the plus size model now, hasn't they? That was like was that like a year ago, was it?
It's a couple of years ago, wasn't it? Yeah.
Well, I think they've realised that was more damaging, because it's that acceptance. And I think that's it, when you just accept when you're in that level of like standard. And I know sort of someone close to me got offended with one of the posts I put around. So I took my son to Mile Well Zoo, and the standard of just people in general, I don't know if it was just a bad day, was horrifying. And I don't mean this like fat shaming anyone, but like I'd say 75% of the people there were overweight. The guy that was serving me couldn't breathe properly. He was panting, stood still. Like the guy had about 5 chins. And I'm like, again, not being horrible to him, but I'm like, Jesus. And we said about variables behind the scene, the grey area, but I'm like, oh my God, like that is like the standard now.
Yeah. Well, statistically, that's not just, could have been a bad day, but most shopping centres, but you're not generally looking to swap physiques with most of the people in there.
JMT.
But just statistically, you're not. You can hide from that, or you can doom scroll your phone and be like, oh, so look, there's some athletic people in Munich and in Sydney and, oh my God, in Atlanta. Go to your local shopping centre and you will see the stats are the stats. Yeah. 75% of people are overweight. It's clear to see.
But the apps now as well are scary, how you can modify, because you've obviously got filters and stuff, but there is a scary amount now that can change physique, put muscle on. There's like, I don't know if you've seen the baby one that's coming out recently, where the baby can just like flex, takes his top off. I'll have to send you it, it's hilarious. But mate, it looks so real as well. And it's just the amount of editing that goes on. And that probably just makes people feel worse about themselves, where, like we said, that golf, even though it's not real, like you said, if your perception of how far away that is just too far, you'll be like, oh, fuck it. Do you know what I mean? So.
Yeah, I think to summarise, I think shame is a strong word, and that's probably not the answer. But the needle needs to move a bit from the acceptance of where we've been, and try to galvanise people in some way, whether it's through inspiration or through, if it is a little bit of button pushing, to realise that there needs to be some personal responsibility for kind of the good of humanity, because the stats don't look good and it's only getting worse.
Let's look at the NHS numbers, mate. Not good. Cool. Thank you so much for watching. Stay tuned for next week's episode, and we'll see you soon. Hey!
In my head, I kind of want